All right, people, welcome to another edition of the New Breed Podcast, the world's best music show, talking about everything brutal, new death, hard slam, grind, thrash, core, metal. I'm one half of your hosting duo, Jay Horskow. With me, I have my partner in crime, the notorious TIM. Tim, how's it going?
Great.
Fantastic. Well, we have a special episode for everybody this week. I connected with this guy on Facebook. He didn't automatically block my message, and here we are. We have percussionists from the band PM5K, performing artists from the Blue Man Group, artists from the band Sons of Jupiter, Jordan Cohen. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
We are.
Should I turn my hand around or something? Is it like too dark or like?
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. We've had
Having a bad hair day, you know.
So, Jordan, one of the reasons why I wanted to track you down and I wanted to get you on the show is we were talking about before we started recording. I got to see you guys back in the heyday, right? Late 90s. Really enjoyed Powerman 5000. And as listeners who have heard the show before have heard me say that after you left, it kind of just didn't do the same for me. But before we go into that, I want to really talk about your experiences. I came across an interview where you talked about two percussionists in a band, so I have some questions around that. How does that actually work? But I guess we'll start off with the easy stuff. So, how did you end up playing for Powerman 5000?
Well, you know, as the story goes, the interesting thing was my two older brothers separately knew my oldest brother, because both my older brothers went to Berklee Music School, and I attended there just for a year. Although they were there before me, so I was kind of around there a couple years before. But my older brother, part of his scene was this kind of like, I don't know, like kind of avant-garde rock jazz group of guys, and they were like real kind of weird, crazy guys and really, really good musicians. And the guy who was playing percussion in that and just doing, you know, just other crazy sound effects and stuff was Al Pahanish, who was the drummer for Powerman 5000. So he probably knew Al from that. Separately, my brother, Adrian, my immediate oldest brother, worked at a sandwich shop called Mississippi's with Spider. So they worked together at this sandwich shop in Kenmore Square in Boston. And so I think I heard about the audition from Al somehow. I don't really remember, but it was just weird that I knew two of the band members through my brothers in completely separate places. But they were auditioning for percussionist. The earliest version of the band had a guy that did a little percussion, and then another guy who turned out to be a really killer drummer who ended up out here playing with Britney Spears and stuff. This guy Ernie LaRouche. He was like a very, very brief stint before me. But they were looking for, you know, kind of the second drummer percussionist. And I went and kind of auditioned, whatever. It's pretty casual. And they're like, yeah, you're cool. Let's do it. Let's start playing. And almost immediately it felt like something, you know, felt like there was some little magic or something going on. And I played well with them. And I've always been pretty good at, like, I don't know, playing with other people and mimicking them. So the percussion role was kind of a support role. And Al and I played really well together, and then, you know, the musicians in the band were great. Spider had a great vision, and there was just that thing. It had that thing. When I joined, I think it like really clicked, and then we started, you know, I guess rising popularity. And they already had a little bit of a name, but then it was like just our unit. You know, when the right group of people gets together and does something, it really it takes on a life of its own. And so it basically did that, more or less.
I'm glad you brought that up early, because I wanted to ask about that. I read it in preparing for this interview. I read a bunch of the interviews you did, and you talked about how the intricacies with the drummer and a percussionist playing in the band at the same time, and how it really is a test of skill to find places where it fits and interacts without overpowering. Was that kind of tough, Jordan, to start?
Yeah,
how do you find your niche, you know?
That's a good observation, because for Al, the drummer at the time in Powerman, he was a real groove player, a real finesse player, where I'm a little bit of a chops guy, you know. So when I went to Blue Man, there's a lot of guys like that who can just play crazy stuff and really fast, and, you know, play a bunch of stupid stuff, you know. But so there'd be moments where I might want to do that, Um, and I'd have to dial it back and support, and not, not try to outshine Al, and not try to, do too much. Because any advice I'd give to any musician is, if you're playing in a band with a singer, it's about the story, it's about the song. So what are you doing to serve the song, to serve the story? You're playing a bunch of random stuff. I keep going to swear, but it's like I'm not gonna.
Oh no, you can swear. We are totally
a
all right.
bunch of random shit. It's just not gonna always forward the story and forward what you're doing. So it's just like a series of gears, interlocking parts that really worked well in that band. And usually, when you come up with something, it's a good idea to maybe um, how can I strip it down to its bare essence to make it, as impactful and tell the story, and some things, like, I mean, if you look at, say, like a band like Meshuggah or something like that, there are these amazing things going on, but there are interlocking parts going on, and they're very meditative. And so you take them on their own, it's almost like, a piece of classical music like Bach or something like that, where there's this counterpoint to what's going on. So, some things work where it's completely ballistic and crazy. But with Power Man, it was about the interlocking, the moving parts, and how do you make them click together, and you find holes where to play things. So,
And that was the cool part. You introduced all sorts of different percussion instruments in a way where it never came off like a gimmick. Because there were a lot of bands at that time that there was a gimmick. Hey, we have a turntable guy. Hey, we'll have this. Hey, we'll have that. Not to speak ill of bands with turntables or any of that, but you're playing it. I don't know how to find better words, that it fit right in the music where it was supposed to be. It never felt like an add-on.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear. When I look back at it, I wish, like, and then especially after doing the Blue Man thing with multiple drummers, I wish I integrated some like bigger kind of taiko type, like, bigger, more powerful drums in my setup. Hindsight,
Right.
But thing, it mostly worked. I do some weird things sometimes, like I have a spoke of a rototom I would play in parts, and I don't know if you know what rototoms are, those little like toms, that twist, you can tune them. So I just try to be inventive. Now, again, I'm like, oh man, I should have done this, I should have done that. I would have had so many more, because, maybe seeing the internet and YouTube videos, you see people doing so many creative things. But it worked, it worked.
Before we go any further, let's talk about this Strange Anatomy band.
How did you hear about this? You guys did your homework or something? Yeah.
We do our homework, brother.
Nice. Yeah. That was kind of like my father wrangling us into a band with a couple, like my older brother's childhood friends. And that was my first band, real band. I was like, I think 12 when we started, and the bulk of the band was 13. But it was like we were trying to do like, and then my father brought in his best friend, who was like a music producer in New York. So this guy named George Andrews, he had produced. Did you ever hear that song "Turn the Beat Around"? Like old disco song.
Mm-hmm.
He did that, and he produced the Bay City Rollers, an old school '70s band. And he was involved, like he when he was real young, he worked for Quincy Jones, the producer, Thriller, and everything. So this guy was brought in because he was in the New York music scene, and he was brought in to like put us into like pop music boot camp, because it's almost like a pop punk band back, or a new wave pop band, kind of, I guess, more like that. And so he was getting us together and rehearsing, and we were playing like local, I guess, like just weird local venues, fairs, and like the local video game room and everything. But then it was like, oh, we're going to take a step up with this guy coming in. We had a couple of TV appearances, and then somehow my dad set it up where we played CBGBs, and I was like 13.
Nice.
So it was really cool, because over the years I've played there with different bands and hung out there. But this was 1980. I'm in my early 50s now, so it was like 1983, man, and it was really, New York was cool then. It was still like cool.
Yeah. That was the old New York. Yeah, that was the old New York.
Like it was, And I remember when we rehearsed for that, we had a couple times we came into New York to rehearse, I think specifically for that, and it was a bass player at this rehearsal space run by the bass player from the band The Plasmatics. I don't know if you remember this band.
Yep, Wendy-O and the Plasmatics. Yep.
Yeah, Wendy-O, yeah. So this guy had a rehearsal studio, and we rehearsed in that studio, and it was like kind of a timed rehearsal thing because at a certain time of night, you had to like get the hell out of there because a couple Rottweilers would come out. That was the security system with these two Rottweilers. So, but it was pretty cool. It was somewhere in like, I don't know what it was. I think it was like where some of those studios are, like around the, near the like FIT, like, like
Yeah. Okay.
Design, 7th Avenue over there. So,
Shit, you're
but yeah,
playing
that band,
CBGBs and I'm just bored.
yeah. Well, I'm old as fucking dirt, brother. So, but yeah, that was pretty amazing because I never heard my drums sound like that too. There's some woman doing sound, and it was like my drums sounded like, I don't know. It was kind of like there was an era where like especially New York bands like and some of the hardcore bands like Bad Brains, their drum sound, or the Cro-Mags, some of these, they had this big reverby drum sound. So like, and maybe, a lot of, maybe it was like Phil Collins had that too, but it was cool. So I always like to brag on that one. Yeah, I was 13, played CBGBs.
You should brag about that. That's bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially considering now it's what, a John Varvatos? You buy suits there? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of sad, but
Oh, it's super sad. I like
some of John Varvatos stuff. It's way overpriced and
True, but it's, I mean, you walk into the store and the stage is there, and then you go in the bathroom and you're like, I'm in a hardcore mecca, and you walk out and there's somebody selling you a $1,200 fitted suit. It's like kind of a weird capitalism juxtaposition,
Yeah, very, very well put. Very well put. Yeah.
So you and you said your brothers went to Berkeley. Did you go to Berkeley too, Jordan?
I only went for a year.
Okay.
We kind of, very strangely, it was like before us, the like famous jazz guys, the Marcellus family from New Orleans, like Wynton Marcellus, he was the trumpet player, and Branford Marcellus and everything. They were before us the only three brothers that were going at the same time or something, and then we all like dropped out the same year because it was pretty expensive for my parents, and I had some freak accident where a cooking accident where I cut off a good tip of my left thumb. And so I couldn't take some proficiency exams, whatever. And the teacher was like, oh, you'll be fine. I'll just pass you. And then he didn't pass me. So then I was below credit level to get financial aid. So this guy screwed me over. And I kind of was a combination of just wanted to get out there and play, kind of lazy about school, and then didn't want my parents to spend all this money. And so I kind of wish I went back, but to this day, a lot of people in my professional life I've worked with have been from there. Like, people in Blue Man, the Power Man guys, all of them went to Berkeley. I mean, like, Spider didn't, but all the musicians in that band.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And they were not typical kind of Berkeley players, really, you know what I mean? But they're all very different. But yeah, so I went there for a while. Amazing school, and thumbs up.
I was just gonna ask you, like, is that typically like a jazz-centered school? I don't really know too much about Berkeley.
Yeah, it's a big jazz school, but like there's a big jazz and pop music, but there's a lot of shredder guys that go there. That like there's definitely metal guys that go there. There's a big the technology has changed years from when I was there, but I think the film scoring department is huge, and there's probably it's definitely big intensive courses in like Ableton and everything. So there's probably electronic music department is probably huge now too. So it's probably changed from being like a strictly kind of jazz school, but yeah, there'd be a lot of shredding players.
Is that where Dave Davidson went?
Yep. Dave Davidson, Revocation. Yeah, he's a Berkeley grad.
Okay.
What band is it from?
Revocation. They're a metal band out of, I think, Boston. Yeah.
Oh wow, I don't know those guys. Yeah.
He watching. I I was not a fan until I finally saw him live. But watching that guy go up and down the fretboard, he makes it look effortless to the point where you kind of just stand there and you're just looking, going, how does he make that look so easy? And he sings at the same time, and they're a pretty energetic band, so you're kind of like, wow, good for him.
Yeah, it's crazy shit, man.
Yeah, the level of talent there was off the charts. It was always like, you know, for being a young kid, it was pretty intimidating, and you know, it's yeah. There's just so many good musicians out there. But again, you know, I always hold to the you know, the tenet, because I teach drums. If anyone wants to take online lessons, I do online lessons.
Nice.
But it's, to me, it's always about serving the music and the song and everything like that. And if you're shredding, you know, while you're doing it, and you know, so I'm always like, I see all these videos of YouTube and these young kids just killing it, but it's like, after a while, it gets a little boring to me, unless it's like, you know, really serving a purpose, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I like shredding. You know, it's just, you know, sometimes it's like, if that's all that's going on, I get like, well, you know.
Yeah, it drives Tim nuts. He calls it, what do you call it? Cat shit noodling or something was your term, Tim, where they're just playing up and down the fretboard for the sake of
fretboard gymnastics.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But you know, it's interesting because I saw like an old Slayer video where like Kerry King had hair. I don't know, something. It was just the algorithm, and he was kind of doing that. But it just, you know, it took, you know, the music is already mayhem, but then that stuff comes in, kind of like Meshuggah, again, one of my favorite metal bands. Like sometimes the solos are just so ape shit. You're like, it's just like, it's some kind of like mood where you're just like, okay, I'm gonna explode now. You know, it's like,
yeah, give me some groove, man. I need groove.
Yeah, yep. And to your point, Jordan, with some of the drumming, Tim and I talk about this all the time, where there is it's great that these guys can play so fast with precision, and it's kind of impressive. But at the same time, there's something that's lost when it sounds like it was just snapped to a grid. Yep. You know, it sounds too clean. When you go back and listen to the old Slayer, go back and listen to old Igor Cavalera, right, from some of the early Sepultura albums. He's not perfect. He slows up, he speeds down. There's some organic parts where that's what makes it, you know, so interesting to hear. And then I love these guys that can blast and can grind, and, you know, the gravity blast, and they're all over the place. But at the same time, it's almost too clean, almost to the point where your ear kind of thinks, well, this doesn't sound right. Something's got to be wrong.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you, like, you know, say like Korn, for instance, like Ray Luzier, the drummer now, who I know, who's a beautiful guy, an amazing drummer. But it's interesting because you're like, sometimes he's just so good, it sounds like a little too perfect. And David Silveira is not nearly a good drummer as him, but he had character. And, you know, and so it's kind of like, you know, it's like, you know, Bob Dylan had character. Was he a great singer? You know, debatable, I guess. But like, you know, I'm always looking for character. And there's again, a lot of these YouTube videos, and you see these people, you know, it's just, I get nothing emotionally out of it. I'm just like, okay, it's like, gymnastics, like you said, Tim. So
I love how you brought up David and said he's not the greatest drummer, but he has character, because that is fucking perfect. And I had never heard anyone say it like that, because I always thought them two first
vibe and character, then that music wouldn't have been the same with
exactly. Without him, them records are not as nearly as good.
Yeah,
because some of that snare work and stuff is amazing, dude.
Well, you think about it, you think about the music, like that band in particular, a lot of it was like on-stage therapy, working through like childhood trauma and angst. And it's almost like a tantrum or a fit, where it's like, there's like a, you know, and the music breathes and moves and like then explodes, and perfect playing would maybe not convey that kind of
emotion,
neurotic energy. So again, it's just, you know, it's like, I'm, you know, not a huge concept guy, but I like to have like a concept and idea of like what you're doing and why and what you're trying to convey. And with, you know, with anything I do, I think it's good to have that intention. Maybe I didn't think that way when I was a little younger, you know, so.
The darkness that surrounds that first record is so prominent, man. Like, you're right. If it was like done a different way, it would not be the same record at all.
Right, and perfection doesn't have its place there. I mean, it is perfection, being imperfect.
Yeah, it's perfection in a like a real visceral way.
It's perfectly imperfect, right?
Yeah.
And so to your point, that was one of the great things. So Tim and I are of that age where we remember that stuff when we were kids. Like that was the music we grew up with. And one of the wild parts about that time was every band was just a little bit different. They were more different than they were the same. So, if, like, for example, that first Ozfest, right? The not even the touring Ozfest, the one that I want to ask how you guys ended up on that thing, but the one that was in Arizona, in California, it was you, it was Earth Crisis, it was Cellophane, it was Cold Chamber, right? Like all bands that are in this weird sort of orbit, but nothing where you can put your finger on it and say they all have this in common. And then the next year they added Downset and Neurosis and all that sort of stuff. How did that come about, Jordan? How did you guys get tapped to end up on the first Ozfest and then tie it into the next year where there was the full US tour? How'd that happen?
Well, I think it was, like we got big on our own in Boston, and then we got a deal, got signed by DreamWorks. Then we took on Concrete Management, which was a big management company, and they managed White Zombie and Rob. So Rob never had any hand in anything. But then after that point, then he and Andy Gould, Concrete Management, co-managed us. And then we took on, I feel bad, I forget the booking agent that did Zombie too, some other bands. He was a booking agent. And so we, it was kind of like for a baby band, we really got a lot of breaks, but I think we followed through. So, because we literally, there was a litmus test, like I think you said, and the first Ozfest show, it was like a beta test or whatever. It was just a one-off, and then the festival that you said, Downset, Neurosis, and Black Sabbath, all that came about the next year. But I think we proved ourselves that first year, the first show. But it came about like taking on, just getting into the big leagues and getting big league help. But I think also, I think we were a different kind of band. We had that weird kind of funk soul / hip hop undercurrent with hard rock and metal. So it was just it was very much I always tell people when you talk about new metal, I'm like, okay, if you know about new metal, then you have to know about the Judgment Night soundtrack.
Yeah.
Judgment Night soundtrack was like a blueprint for all this stuff. So I think kind of what we did was very akin to that, like throwing these different ingredients in and making our own stew, more or less. But once we got into the big leagues, we were like swim, and we had to. And I think we did good. We ended up not being properly marketed, and so it's kind of interesting. Like you talk about new metal, there was a VH1 special a number of years ago, and it's been rebroadcast about new metal. Nowhere are we mentioned. And I'm like,
which is a travesty, man. And I'm not saying that because you're on the show. That's a travesty.
Because we were around before some of these other bands. Also, we had the drum percussion thing. And again, after that, we saw Rage. Rage had a percussion for a set of shows in LA. Cypress Hill had a percussionist. They weren't doing that before seeing us. But point being, I guess I lost my train of thought. But we were thrown in the big leagues and had to make it work, and I think we did. But yeah, again, what I'm saying, we weren't completely marketed properly because DreamWorks was operating out of the offices of Geffen Records, and so they didn't have really their own identity, and it was Geffen employees kind of doing things. So we were kind of mishandled, and I think the band would have been much bigger. But then it was tensions in the band, and I left, and then they took on the new identity, and then a few years later, Alan and Dorian, the rhythm section, left, and then eventually Adam too. But I think if the band was handled properly, the record company at the time was more of a realized its own thing, then I think the band would have broken more.
I agree.
Definitely after I left, that next record did really well, and I actually like that record. Tonight the Stars Were Born.
Yeah, I think you guys were terribly mismarketed because and Tim and I talk about this all the time on the show. The years of 90, basically 95 all the way through to 99, all these bands came out and they were all nobody was the same. So I mean, look at that touring Ozfest. You were on the same bill as the second stage it was you guys, it was Coal Chamber, it was Machine Head, it was Drain STH, it was Slow Burn, which is John Garcia's project, Vision of Disorder, Neurosis. The next year it was System of a Down opening the show at 11:30 a.m. It was Incubus. It was crazy. Snot. It was Ultraspank. All these bands that
we were on most of the tour. We were that slot on the main stage. So
oh wow,
we were on the main stage most of the tour. I think it was us, and then who was after us? Fear Factory, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
So we were in that early slot, and you want a good story about that?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
This is a great story. No offense to you, Ozzy. You won't be listening, but Ozzy was known to be a little incontinent from years of partying and everything. So he would play, Black Sabbath and Ozzy would play. Then the next morning they'd roll out this big carpet and stuff on the stage. Wouldn't really be able to clean the carpet, so it would smell like a cat box.
Oh,
because Ozzy, had his doing his thing all night, sweating and peeing on the stage and stuff. So early morning, you're hungover or something. You get on stage and you're like, fuck.
Oh, early in the morning when the sun's still out. Oh, God bless you, man. God bless you.
Some vampire action there, But yeah,
God bless you,
Jesus.
But then we were like one of the later acts on the second stage. In Mile High Stadium, I think, and Giant Stadium. That was really fun. The Giant Stadium was amazing because you're surrounded by I think it was 65,000 people or something. It was that was one of the biggest crowds I ever played to. It was incredible,
Yeah, that was an awesome show. I remember being heartbroken because there was all that Marilyn Manson outrage. So they cut Drain STH, VOD, and Slow Burn never played.
Wait, what happened? I forgot what happened. What happened with that?
There was all that outrage. This is Marilyn Manson touring during the height of Antichrist Superstar, and all these people got outraged that he was going to rip a Bible in half, and it was all this kind of the same cultural bullshit we're going through now. So I remember they cut the start of the show, and they lopped VOD, Drain STH, and Slow Burn, and I'm still a big VOD fan, and I was completely heartbroken.
Oh yeah, I love that band. I love the whole delay vocal thing. So cool. We toured that year. We toured with Marilyn Manson on Antichrist Superstar in Canada for 3 weeks. And I think 2 or 3 of the dates, maybe 2 got canceled, but a number were picketed. But those guys, it was super fun tour,
So Jordan, before we started, we spoke about how I actually saw you guys with Coal Chamber and Seven Dust. Was that after Ozfest? Or was that before?
God, you're dating me here, man. It's funny. I have all the tour books I go look, but I believe that was after.
Okay.
No, I think it was after. Man, don't quote me.
I think you're right though, because I think Ozfest was early in the summer, and then this was later. Yeah.
Right. During the Ozfest, we would do off-day dates with Fear Factory and Typo.
Oh, nice.
That's an awesome lineup. Yeah.
Yeah, they were great. Yeah, I mean. Both those bands were really fun to watch.
But one of the things you said earlier, you talked about your funk influence in Powerman 5000. That's what made it. I mean, I tell people, you want to understand what the first album sounds like. You want to listen to Neckbone, you want to listen to Tokyo Vigilante, and you want to listen to Stand and 8. I said, go through those 3 songs and you will get a nice dip of the funk, the aggression, and the fun soul stuff that they actually add to all the songs. I love that album all the time. And I used to listen to that. My brother, who's 4 years younger than me, who I dragged with me, like you and your brothers, probably dragged him to every show with me. He's like, yeah. He texted me the other day and he said, you know what album I dug out that I forgot how much I enjoyed it? Mega Kung Fu Radio. And I replied, funny you should mention that. We're having Jordan on the show later this week. He was like, dude, that's awesome. But yeah, cool. It holds up. It holds up really well.
No, again, it's I felt like it was a perfect album from start to finish, and it really, I like what Rob Zombie and Spider do. I like their cultural pastiche of things. It's real campy, and it's funny because I didn't like White Zombie at first when I heard him, and then I came to really like. It's kind of weird. Like like the Misfits. We toured with Danzig, and I was like, I didn't really know it that well. Now I love the Misfits. You know, I came to really dig them. But yeah, great record. I think that there's Tonight the Stars Revolt too. There's a couple songs I really like. Supernova Goes Pop. Like I'm kind of a fan of that record. A lot of the stuff afterwards I wasn't that into, and usually when they come here, I'll go see them. They were here last week, and I couldn't. You know, and like Spider texted me, he's like, "You coming to the show tonight?" And I'm like, "There's a show tonight." I was like, "But I did see them when they toured with Zombie here."
Okay.
But I didn't even get to hang out because there was like I had to. I'm an older dad, but I have young kids, and I had to get my kids at daycare, so I couldn't hang out. You know.
Wait, this was recently?
What's that?
This was recently?
The Zombie, Mudvayne, Static X tour came through.
Oh yeah. Okay. Shit.
And I did get to see Static X, and I was like, it's crazy how much that guy like looks like and sounds like Wayne Static. And again, it's a band I wasn't that into, but I really dug that show. They sounded great.
Yeah,
but
it's got to be the singer from Dope.
What's that?
It's got to be the singer from Dope.
I never toured with Dope. Like right after I left, they got like a little associate. They became friends with the Dope guys when they did tours, and yeah, it's strange because I'm friends with a bunch of people that like some of the band members from later. Like specifically, there's a guy Adrian who played in the band, and then a guy named Siggy, a bass player. And I'm friends with both those guys. But and like I just kind of met them through my association with Power Man. I'm like, oh yeah, you're in that band too. And like I'll see those guys when they come through. But yeah, Power Man played here like a week ago, and I couldn't go because it was
shit. Okay.
Yeah. It was my wife's roller skating night, and I was like, someone's got to watch the kids, and I didn't have plans, so but they'll come through again. But
Yep. Family has to come first. So I did want to ask you, Jordan, how did you get hooked up with the Blue Man Group? Because I mean, I've seen them. They've come to Philly. They toured at one point, and I saw them come through Philly. And the wife and I loved it. Like it was a really enjoyable, interesting show. How did you get hooked up with that?
Well, in like 1999, when they were casting their soon-to-be flagship Vegas production, it was a real big deal for the company, whatever. Couple people that worked in the show were like kind of Boston rock veterans. And then the music director at the time was this guy named Todd Perlmutter, who was in a band called Orangutan. It was a really cool band. And he's like casting it. So he tapped all these guys from old rock bands in Boston to be in it. And I was one of the guys. And I think, after I left Power Man, I left LA, I went back to New York. I was living in New York for a couple of years. And was auditioning for random stuff and heard about that. And then talked to him. And then like a year later, I got called for the audition for Vegas. And it was like one of those cattle call auditions. There's a ton of people, and it was like really stressful because there's other drummers. And, but he's like, "Hey, you're fine. I'm sure you got the gig, And then I was, part of the band. And at that point, they were casting for a 7-piece band. And, there's multiple shows a week, so there's like 2 full bands. So they were casting for like 14 or 15 musicians. So I got the gig and then moved out here. And that was like 22 years ago. So
that is wild.
So yeah, I've never done anything that long. And I'm an old, chronically injured, beat up drummer. And like, so I still do the show. I'm part-time now after the pandemic. It's not the greatest thing. Some of us were part-time because they trimmed the fat and the amount of shows, but now they're adding shows, so that might change. But I still, regularly play shows,
Okay.
So this weekend I'm playing like 5 shows this weekend, and the show still does really good, which is crazy, running this long.
It's a fun. Tim, did you ever get a chance to see it? They played The Man. I think it was 2 summers in a row. You ever get to go?
No. I'm just curious about like like, is it makeup? Is it a mask? I don't really know too much about Blue Man Group. I'm not gonna lie.
So it's really hard to convey, but it's like the 3 blue characters are kind of these. They don't speak, and they kind of stumble in all these percussion instruments, and the band, and basically the visual you see is they're on stage, and then there are two suspended lofts up in above the stage where we're in black light. We're wearing like almost like skeletal looking costumes and face paint, tribal face paint. So we kind of look like tribal warriors up there, but we're, featured in the show, most of the show. There's periods where, our lights go on, but the lights come on and we're going crazy doing our thing. Then the drumming is really pretty challenging, really brutal. We hit really hard, a lot of notes. And there used to be a 7-piece band. Now there's a 4-piece band. But the show is kind of like, it's almost like old school, like vaudeville or something. It's a series of random acts, but there's kind of a narrative to the show, and they're discovering things, and there's kind of critiques on art and science and music and popular culture. Now, some critiques on social media and things like that are in there. So it's hard to really describe like the story of what's going on, but once people go there, they kind of just get it. And then there's a spectacle aspect of like all these weird PVC instruments and huge drums, and the paint splatter. And they go out in the audience and like interact with the audience quite a bit too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things, Tim. If they ever come through Philly, it's worth taking the girl and going because it's a lot of fun. Like Jordan said, like at one point they get these giant PVC tubes out and they're basically playing them with what look like ping pong paddles. But the tubes are so huge that it reverberates, and it's really, really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah. I mean, the music, it's like it's a theater show, but the music is not. It's not like a Broadway pit orchestra. It's like a rock band,
Yeah.
And the influence of the music, there's big influences from like 80s new wave, surf music, punk rock, kind of. Like kind of spaghetti Western stuff. And then there's more like a lot of electronic influence. But a lot of the guys that wrote the music are like kind of just rocker guys and wrote this weird stuff,
So the people who wrote it don't actually perform it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's more like a Broadway show than like an actual musical. Like there's acting and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but they don't talk. They're like weird characters. They're kind of like aliens in a way. But yeah, I mean, over like the guys that started it or not, they sold the company a while ago, and like there's, in our production, there's anywhere from like 12 to 14 shows a week. So you have multiple cast members doing it. Then you have a show in Boston, in New York, in Chicago, Germany, Berlin. There's a touring production, national touring. There's a worldwide touring production. And then they've had shows in other places before too. So you have like, 40, 50, 60 performing like musicians and Blue Men around the globe,
Oh shit.
And
okay.
And when we need coverage here, sometimes there's musicians from other cities that will come in. There's a bunch of guys in LA that are Blue Men that are actors. So it's weird. Like, we have guys that act in movies that come in and do it. There's one guy that's done a whole bunch of stuff on Nickelodeon. Was one of the like Blue Men. And then band members, like there's one guy now who's a sub, who's doing a lot. Part-time guys do a lot. He was in Marilyn Manson's band for a while. There's another sub that doesn't work as much because now he's like a journeyman electrician, but he was a drummer in Static X for a while. So there's, Tim Alexander from Primus did it for a while, years ago. So yeah, there's interesting guys from other bands that have come and done it, but right now there's, two of the guys, there's, me, Power Man, Static X, Marilyn Manson, guys who, veterans of those bands that do it. So you have a lot of rock guys.
That is really wild.
Yeah, it's cool, man.
It's like the next stage of everybody's career. So speaking of that, Jordan, aside from Blue Man Group, what else are you doing musically? You have any other projects you're working on? Sons of Jupiter? What else is going on?
I'm always writing for Sons of Jupiter, but like right now I'm in a pretty laying low period. But I'm working on Sons of Jupiter music, and I'm working on kind of like filmish music. And I have like a new like kind of like weird like ambient loungy thing, improv thing I'm doing with some guys. But right now I'm really laying low, and I'm kind of like I'm basically a stay-at-home dad during the day, or shuttling my kids around to school. So, and then at night I go and play shows. And I've played with some bands here and there, but I'm kind of laying low. I'm
Okay.
interested in doing other things, but being a dad and having the gig, it's like you live in Vegas and do things here. But there'll be other things in the future. But right for a few years, it's been a good amount of laying. Well, I mean, obviously, add COVID in, it's more like 5-6 years. So
Yeah. I got to tell you, Jordan, I was out in Vegas for Psycho Las Vegas back in August.
Right.
And that was one of the most insane things I've ever done.
Like, I really wanted to go to that, but I just missed it. Yeah.
Well, next year I'll call you and I'll heckle you until you come out. And meet
Yeah. Call me because I would. I have some friends that went, but and I also work 2 of the nights. That's
okay.
A lot of times I'm like doing shows and so
yeah, it was something else. I've never seen a festival put on of that magnitude with that many people, and it kind of from the outside it looked like it went flawless. And
who did you see that you liked?
So some of the bands I was surprised by. There's a band from Colorado called Dreadnought, which it's a female singer and a female keyboardist, and they actually holler, like they scream. That was completely mind-blowing. There's a band from Massachusetts called the Squala Grind, what I had never heard before, and I was completely blown off the stage.
What kind of band?
There was a Soft Kill was great. Primitive Man was great. They opened with Mizmor, a band from Seattle, I think, or Portland, which is this well-done black metal. It was, I went out there, Jordan, I knew maybe if of the, say, 100 bands on that lineup, I knew maybe 20 of them. And I was kind of nervous about going because I only knew 20, and it was the best decision I made because I just wandered around and just found new stuff.
Could you do me a favor and maybe message me a couple of those band names?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm been starting to check out a lot of new music, and I haven't for a while, and there's just a lot of good stuff out there,
absolutely.
You get old, we bitch about music, but there's just so much good stuff out there.
It's almost overwhelming.
To keep track of. Yep.
Yeah, Tim has the ability to listen all day, and we'll at the end of the week he's like, "Hey, what'd you listen to this week?" And he gives me this like laundry list, and I'm like,
wow.
I think I listened to Cold Chamber and the new Origin album, and that was it.
Yeah.
So I know we're
Cold Chamber together again.
Nah. Not that I know of. No,
He still does Devil Driver, right?
I think so. Yeah. With doing this show, and again with some of the interviews we've done and some of the topics Tim and I do, it forces me to. I have this weird sort of left brain, right brain, where one half of my brain is listening to all modern stuff, and the other half is listening to new metal from 1995 to 2007. So I have this weird dichotomy going in my head where I've been listening to System of a Down now for 3 days. I got to find something different.
Right.
So I know we're quickly running out of time, Jordan, but I have one last question for you.
Okay, so I got a 4-year-old bothering me. Go.
No worries.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to come say hi? This is Jesse. Come say hi.
Hi, Jesse.
Hey, Jesse.
This is my band right now. This guy, and he's 4 years old, and he is a huge fan of Kiss. Right?
Kiss.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Throw your metal sign. Do your metal sign. Come on, do your metal sign. Come on, do your metal sign. All right, get out of here. Gotta go. Sorry about that, guys.
No. This is family. Family is first, and it's the cool part. So I have one question for you, Jordan. We have a lot of people who listen to this show who are younger, who are in bands trying to get their career started. They're musicians. They're either trying to establish themselves or trying to make themselves to be bigger, get more. What advice would you give to somebody if you had to go back and turn to your 19-year-old self and give yourself a piece of advice with all the things you've experienced and learned, what knowledge would you pass on? What advice would you give another up-and-coming musician?
Well, I mean, kind of the same thing that when I was young. Get in there and do it by the numbers. Practice your instrument. Okay, sure. Practice your instrument. Get good at your instrument. Find like-minded people. And get in, don't try to do like, okay, come on. Don't try to do like get on TV or do videos, get in the garage, get dirty, get sweaty. And, you know, I mean, and go out and play shows. And,
Okay.
and Jesse, you have to go now. Hey, Jesse, now, go, beat it. Go. I said, go. But yeah, I mean, get in there and you know, fail. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You have to try and do it and get better at the craft. And so I would say don't get involved in that, like, you know, social media, YouTube mindset where like and put the cart before the horse and say, oh, I'm a rock star, I'm this, I'm that. Like, no, you're not. Earn it. Yeah. So practice your instrument, get good, find like-minded people, get in there, and also, you know, write good songs, you know.
Yeah, don't do it for the likes.
So the singer really is the most important thing, man. I mean, I'm a drummer, and I want to, but I think if you have a good singer and a good drummer, you can get by. If you don't have a good singer and a good drummer, you can't really get by.
Yeah, very true.
And the guitar players will hate me for that, but you know. But yeah, just, you know, just do the work. Don't, like, you're it's kind of like there's this big, like, kind of motivational social media guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you guys ever seen Gary. And I found the guy really interesting, but it's like, you're flipping hamburgers at that age because that's what you're supposed to do. Don't expect to be like, don't expect all the accolades and the key to the you know, to the club without earning it.
Right. Well, you got to earn it. You got to earn it. Yeah. Perfect.
And you know, it takes a long time to do that, but it's way more enriching doing that. You know.
Perfect. That's perfect. So, Jordan, on behalf.
One more thing.
Go on.
Know your music history.
No. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Know your music history.
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to have that one rattling around the file. So, Jordan, on behalf of everybody listening, on behalf of Tim and myself, we want to really thank you for coming on, man. This has been awesome. I know it took a bit for us to schedule this, but I'm really super stoked.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, part of it was us, too. We had to bail. Tim and I ended up traveling for work. It was a mess. But, yeah, we really want to thank you for coming on. To all of our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this. Hop on the Facebook page. Give us some feedback via your podcast platform of choice. Throw some comments up in the video. And again, we want to thank you all tuning in. And until next time, it's a New Breed Podcast saying peace.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.